It's 9 a.m. on the East Coast. Welcome back to Fox & Friends Weekend. If you were just joining us this morning, we are monitoring a possible major breakthrough in the Nancy Guthrie case. Overnight, law enforcement swarming a Tucson home just 2 miles from the missing 84-year-old's residence.
Law enforcement sources telling Fox News Digital that at least 3 people from that house have been detained, but it's still unknown what, if any, evidence was found in the home at this hour.
A 4th person was also detained outside a Culver's fast food restaurant not far from Nancy's home. Officials have not yet confirmed if this is connected to the investigation. But an interesting development we are following this morning is that officers towed the man's Range Rover after covering the trunk with a tarp as they appeared to search it. It's unknown at this time if any of all of these 4 individuals are indeed suspects. Former ATF Special Agent in Charge Bernie Zapor says this represents significant progress towards cracking the case.
The execution of the search warrant, the seizing or examination of the Range Rover, there's a lot more happening on the other side of it. You can see momentum, and you can see that they're running things to completion, and that shows progress. They have something here that is developing, and these large overt actions such as the search warrant and the vehicle signify that.
All of this comes as we mark a full 2 weeks since Nancy Guthrie was last seen. Let's get straight to Morgan Wright. He is outside of Pima County Sheriff's Office. He's the CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, and he is the host of Crime Reconstructed, which is a podcast. Morgan, so great to have you on again. You've been giving us some great reporting throughout this show. All of this, does it point to you that we're coming really close to solving this case?
You know, I was trying to think of the line that Winston Churchill used, but basically we've reached the end of the beginning. So this case is just starting, right? So a lot of activity up to this point, and then so from this point is when the really hard work is done that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see. It's the evidence collection, it's the evidence analysis, it's going through the reports, it's evaluating witness statements, it's creating additional leads to follow. It's about then the forensic examination of all digital media. I can tell you right now, between where the Range Rover was seized, between Nancy's house, between the location of the search warrant, we're now going to start looking at the digital footprints. Does anything there match in common? For example, on the Range Rover, one quick way to establish a link to see if this Range Rover is related to the search warrant, does the registration come back to the house where the search warrant was done? Is that the registered owner? So those are things, if we find those things out, we can start establishing some links. But this is the visible part of the case. The invisible part of the case that's going to happen behind the walls here at the sheriff's office, that's going to happen in the district attorney's office, that's going to happen, in other areas, in laboratories. That's what's going on now. We won't see anything from that until they actually get results, and then the results are really going to be, it's going to be a report that's going to lead us then into different paths that we can take, different courses of action.
Morgan, it was interesting because really the only information we've gotten from the Pima County Sheriff's Office was that statement about 8 hours ago, saying that the search law enforcement activity at the home where the 3 individuals were detained was connected to the investigation. Then they added that per the request of the FBI, no additional information will be given. What do you make of that? It strikes me as odd that they went out of their way to highlight that the FBI does not want more details out there, as we, of course, are waiting for more details.
You've just hit upon a key link that goes back to the Range Rover, because who was the primary agency involved in the seizure of the Range Rover? That was the FBI. The FBI, because you see, Pima County was obviously doing the search warrant. They were the lead agency on that, but what we saw was the FBI taking the lead on the seizure of the Range Rover. So again, it's one of those things, I don't want to confuse causation and correlation, but all of these things are happening contemporaneously. They're happening at the same time. If the FBI has put out that statement, then one of my questions I would ask if we're at a press conference is, what is the relationship between the FBI taking the lead on seizing the Range Rover and the location of the residence, what's connected there? And the other thing it tells me, too, is that there may be something, we used to do this all the time. We didn't want to give out information. We would withhold information like manner of death, cause of death, because it would give away some of our investigative tactics. And so it may be is that there's something in that vehicle, that's why they covered it up, that is important to this case, if we're making that link, that they don't want known because it would give away, basically inside baseball type of information that only the people involved in the crime would know. That's one of the plausible explanations you could come up with.
Right. One of the things that we have not heard a lot of speculation about or talk about, certainly not from the sheriff's office, is cell phone data. And I guess there are various reasons for that. But once you have people in custody and you have people identified who are at least subjects of interest, suddenly cell phone data suddenly becomes a lot more useful in a situation like that. Explain that.
Well, actually, there's a lot of data that's already available from what's called ad tech, and that's I've got 2 analysts right now working on that. We're taking in all of the ad tech data, the mobile app data, the pings that mobile apps make, and that entire area, and we're looking to correlate. The other thing then with cell phones, when you're thinking of the signal from the cell phone, now I'm pinging the tower to determine where I am. That's going to be very critical. Now, to do that, though, you just can't go and seize those phones and search those without a warrant. So part of the process was, did the search warrant allow for the seizure? And James was talking about it earlier. You can't go, as this saying goes, you can't go looking for an elephant in a bread box. So does the warrant allow them to seize the phones, any electronic media, computers, things like that? But I'm telling you right now, once they have that, even without an arrest, you could still serve a subpoena on any of the carriers and say, I need information about subscriber information, and show me the FBI cellular survey analysis team is going to take that information, and now you're going to start mapping out a pattern of life based upon where those devices were.
We've talked throughout this show about the psychology, not just of these abductors, these people who have we believe might have intruded into this home and taken Nancy Guthrie, but we're also been talking about the psychology of all the investigators, the FBI, the local law enforcement, the sheriff's office. What does a breakthrough like this do to the investigation in terms of lifting hopes and getting people it's exhausting, 20,000 tips, running everything down, all these details, hitting walls earlier, in week 1 and even into week 2 until this happened. Talk to me about that part of the investigation.
Let me give you a broader stat, and I'll come into this.
Sure.
I don't think a lot of people hear a lot about line of duty deaths, about how many officers are killed in the line of duty each year. What people don't realize is, on average, there's 3 times as many officers who commit suicide as are killed in the line of duty. And let me tell you, that comes from jobs like this. This comes from delivering the worst kind of news. I had to do that 3 times in 1 week. At the end of that week, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. When you knock on the door and have to give a family the worst news they've ever had in their life. With stuff like this, does it give you hope? Realistically, yes, but realistically, it's like, man, we still need to find Nancy. We still need to bring her home, wherever she is, whatever condition she's in. And so that's still the frustrating part. And I'll tell you, when you get home and you realize when you've seen enough death to last you 1,000 lifetimes, it's like when you go home, it's like James was saying earlier, you don't want to bring this home. You don't want to inflict this on your family. There's a great book out there called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, Dr. Kenneth Gilmartin. I give this to everybody. I gave it to my nephew, who's a police officer in St. Paul. You have to have emotional tools in this day and age to deal with the kind of things that you see. But this is some relief. But at the same time, it's the beginning. It's an adrenaline drop, a lot of fatigue, and then you got to get yourself back up and run another marathon.
Well, and Morgan, it would seem after 2 weeks, obviously these investigators are exhausted, but it does appear, this is the largest law enforcement activity overnight we've seen in 14 days since this all began. So maybe they are getting some adrenaline and morale boost that they may be closer. I just want to go back to, you're talking about the FBI taking the Range Rover in custody. I know it's an informed, speculative guess, but what do you think's in that Range Rover?
I wish I could say I can't, but what I can tell you is the fact that they did seize it means that there's something in there that's vital to an investigative effort that warranted, which this is extraordinary. You just don't go seize vehicles every day. You don't say, hey, I'm going to take your vehicle. It had to be something that was of evidentiary value. There's this case called the Carroll Doctrine about how you can search vehicles without a warrant based on the fact that it's mobile. And so the fact that you've gone beyond that, this is not just search, this is a seizure. And so I'm wondering if somewhere there is there a search warrant to allow for the seizure of that vehicle to search it. So I don't know what's in there, but the fact that they were covering it up, you know, you saw that yellow cloth out there like you see, the viewers see right there, the fact that they're covering it up, I don't know what was in there, but it was something that was big enough that it required extending it out, 8 feet or 9 feet. You had several people holding that up and lifting it out. If it was a phone, if it was a device, you wouldn't cover it up like that. Not sure what that is, but it's something big enough that there's evidentiary value still left in that Range Rover.
So just for clarity, they put it on the flatbed and took it presumably to a FBI forensics processing area. But if there would have been something like DNA or, God forbid, blood or something else that might require more time, would that have required the flatbed versus, say, if there was just a backpack or some phones in there, or would they have just taken it regardless to process it and then figure out what they have?
Yeah, I think they would have taken it. One of the homicide cases I worked, I got called out in the morning. The windows were broken out, car was parked on a snowy street, lights on, blood spatter on that. We didn't want to mess with doing anything on the street. We put it on a flatbed, took it back into a secured area, did the super glue fuming on it and everything. Some point you've got to get that into an environment to where you can control it and continue the examination. And I will tell you, based on exactly what you said, Griff, we know, at least my belief is based on the blood trail, the fact that it appears that you're going to have at least two people help remove a body and control that. So at some point we're looking for a vehicle, I think, and so any vehicle that meets the threshold to be considered in that case is going to get examined. It's going to get looked for trace evidence, for biologic, for DNA. This thing is going to be gone. By the time this gets done, it will look better than if it had gone through a high-end car wash and detailing.
Wow.
Morgan Wright, thank you so much for your help all morning, and we'll be checking back in with you as things warrant.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.